Welcome to Iceland. My name is Gylfi, and I will be your brutally honest guide while we explore the village Blönduós that is situated by Highway number 1 in the Northwest District. And this town visit is not only about to show you how to get there and how to enjoy the town, I will also be showing you how to stay away from it. Because if you ask an Icelander what comes to mind when Blönduós is mentioned, it will for sure be the local police. And you might even hear the F word as well, because they have likely issued more speeding tickets than any other police department in the country. So is this image of the town fair, or does it have anything more to offer than the local cops lurking behind the next hill? And it's only one way to find out. So welcome to Blönduós. We start the journey on a map, overlooking the complete municipality Húnabyggð. It is the home of little over 1,300 souls, with all this territory under their control. And it includes rural areas between the glaciers Hofsjökull and Langjökull. So for those who are planning a highland trip, Blönduós is one of the ideal places to fill the car up with petrol, from where it takes us only 30 minutes to drive into one of the most popular driving routes across the highlands, or the so-called Kjölur Road or Kjalvegur. It is a summer road that is suitable for all cars, and the most popular stopover is the Hveravellir geothermal area, where we find this nice color palette just by old-fashioned nature baths. And when I talk about old-fashioned nature baths, I'm not talking about high-end pools like the Blue Lagoon. And if you find a curious sheep in or around the dressing room, you can be sure that nature baths is what you are getting. And this place here, this is at the edge of the highlands. It's where the melting glaciers start to turn into money in turbines, where they generate 150 megawatts. And when we go with the flow, the water ends up in the River Blanda, and the River Blanda flows into the sea at our main destination, Blönduós. So the town's name means the mouth of the River Blanda, and it is the home of little under 1,000 people. And before we do the actual town tour, I want to check out what is perhaps the most popular tourist attraction nearby. Around 20 minutes south of the town, we find a geological phenomena that was a mystery for a long time, or the so-called Vatnsdalur Valley Mounds, and it would take a large family over a day to count them all, so they can be suggested as a cheap family entertainment. And this cluster of hills was formed during a major natural disaster, when a part of this mountain came crashing down, but the landslide was of such size that the hills formed at quite some distance. And strangely enough, no remains of that landslide are found just by the mountain. So those hills, on their own, could easily be mistaken for rootless cones, like we find where lava travels over wetlands and leaves us with clusters of little steam explosion craters. But only a few decades ago, it turned out that those hills were made from similar type of rock as can be found up on the mountain. But how exactly the landslide got there, without leaving any remains by the mountain itself, is still today a subject of speculation. Even a glacier up on a mountain has been mentioned as a reason for why the landslide traveled all this way, almost 4 kilometers, leaving us with those hills like they came out of nowhere. And this is, in my opinion, one of the places that deserves more attention. And the valley itself, we call it Vatnsdalur. It is known for a good fishing river, good hunting grounds. So it's a good idea to do a little detour from highway number 1 into the valley that has its own little ring road and enjoy the more natural side of Iceland. But as for local history, where highway number 1 runs through this cluster of hills, we find a new car park. And from there, it takes us only a couple of minutes to walk to this unique historical site, where the last execution in Iceland took place in the year 1830. And that is a story of Agnes and Frederick. This was a criminal case, double homicide and a robbery. And this is a well-documented story from public files like interrogations and other reliable sources at the time. The King of Denmark, who ruled Iceland at the time, provided the eggs for the job that took place exactly here on January 12th, 1830. The eggs is kept in the National Museum of Iceland, and just a few years ago this place was made very accessible for tourists, since this dramatic story has inspired all kinds of literary work and even films. And the story of Agnes and Frederick is also a story that offers good insight into the living conditions in Iceland back then. So my plan is, of course, to cover it here on the channel. So that story will be one of the videos to be expected in 2025, or the last public execution in Iceland before social media. But let's go back to town, Blönduós town. And I need to mention punishment again. But in this case, I'm thinking about the persons responsible for the town planning. Blönduós is likely the biggest urban area design mistake ever here in Iceland. Not only do we have this river that splits the town in two separate units. To make things even worse, highway number 1 runs through the town as well and splits it into 2 more units. So what we have there is an absolute planning disaster. However, when it comes to history, they do have one excuse, but only one. And it is the historical fact that the town originates from 2 municipalities on either side of the river. And those administrative units, they would then merge to form the town officially. So they had this problem right from the start. But obviously never decided to work around it, to maintain some kind of consistency. And now, almost 90 years after the merger, I still don't understand this town, although I've been driving through it for over 50 years now. But drive-through is, however, the word that many Icelanders use for it, as they don't see it usable for anything else. We may use it for a cup of coffee sometimes, even a hot dog, but that's about it. So if I'm brutally honest, the town itself, not the people, it could be more welcoming. And I'm talking about the fact that it doesn't matter whether we drive into it from the north or the south. The only thing we notice is this leading line that kind of just tells us to move on without drawing attention to anything in particular in regards to the town's services. But I did stop for a longer time while I was flying around filming for this video, and while I was doing it I was thinking maybe I should have stopped more often. Like I was noticing streets that I had never seen before, not even new streets, and some of them actually quite nice. And that made me think, all those trips through the town, and I've actually never looked at it as it deserves. But then the town somehow never gave me any clear reason to do a longer stopover. But as for those who live here, it is what they say that matters the most, of course. And I had the pleasure to work in Blönduós for one day last year. It was a filming project for a local company, working on different projects all over town. And it gave me a good chance to talk to many of the laid-back country people that made me feel as there was nothing but happiness about living there. And the location was mentioned quite often. It is extremely well connected, less than 3 hours away from Reykjavík, and less than 2 hours away from Akureyri, the capital of the north. So as for transportation, this is one of the easier places to live in. And it is transportation that made this town different from many other small towns in Iceland. It grew from being a trading post, and the local harbor was mostly used for transportation. So this was never a fishing village, and still today we hardly ever see any boats there. And the town's business life, it revolves around servicing farmers and tourists. They have several small industrial companies, but the big industry is this data center that enjoys the short distance from the nearby power plant. Blönduós has a good food protection reputation. They operate a packaging plant for soups for a 50-year-old Icelandic brand that is distributing goods to stores all around the country. And the location is, of course, helping them with that. And the location is also good for tourists. So let's talk about what they can expect here, or not. The local museum, it exhibits a unique collection of homemade wool, textile work and the Icelandic national costume. So it's a specialty museum that dives into the core of Icelandic textile work. And according to the information I found on TripAdvisor, it gets good remarks. But as for my own grading system, they fail when it comes to marketing, because I didn't find the opening hours on the museum homepage. And the museum seems to be open in summer only, which I find somewhat lame, since we are by the Icelandic Ring Road, and also because this is the only museum in town. I do, however, understand that winters can be tough for every kind of business around here. So the key to success is often to merge more than one operation under the same roof, share as much cost as possible. So my practical mindset that prior to YouTube revolved a lot about working with shops around the country, as I worked in wholesale for a long time. That mindset is asking, wouldn't it be a good idea to merge the exhibition with local markets, with handmade products, because markets of that kind, they often can't cope with the housing cost. And I'm saying this because I want those little towns to thrive. I want to be able to see something else than just a burger grill when I come visit. And for tourists to be able to visit artists making products with ingredients from their own homestead is way more valuable than any tourist information center that does little more than to hand out brochures. And in my opinion, such institutions should be a part of a bigger unit, worth visiting. But this was, however, just a little detour on my behalf, my old job kicking in, my marketing mindset. So let's talk about my TripAdvisor next. It came up with several good options when it comes to dining and accommodation around the town. But as for things to do, it's nothing much to do. But the general service level in a town is quite good, and it works perhaps best as a hub, where we can move from highway number 1 into the more rural parts of the Arctic Coastway. But we can also move inland from the town, and one such route offers us actually to bypass Blönduós and do a rural countryside road that I'm suggesting on the map I'm linking to in the video description. And I have to admit that I tend to do that detour myself, because the main road here, the ring road, this is not the most exciting part of it, for sure, to be brutally honest. And we Icelanders, we have this tendency to get the highway over and done with, and that leads us to what might be one of the biggest industries in and around the town, or the local police. Some say that they are just this extension of the local tourist information center, trying to make your stay longer and, of course, to spend more money. And they take their work so seriously that the Blönduós cops, they have been a huge part of the town's image for a long, long time. And it is not easy to brush off that image, although it has, of course, contributed to increased traffic safety, and that is only positive. But what remains is this problem with the image as a drive-through town, unless the police stops us, of course, and they definitely need some help to create some kind of town spirit, something that stands out better than soups and cops that love soups. So they need marketing 101, and the local planning commission has to be involved, because the town lacks coherence, some kind of theme, and although such changes could take a long time and only develop with new neighborhoods, they simply have to start somewhere. And while I did my homework for this video, I found good news. A local businessman has just renovated the hotel that is located in the oldest part of the town, And the general idea is to make the old town into some kind of attraction. And I was very happy to hear that, since an old-style town center is perhaps the best place to start. And if that works out, they can plan from there. And although we Icelanders tend to mock Blönduós as a town, it has always been a good service center. And when we look closely, it can be a fantastic place for photographers, especially during breeding season. And there is this nice island on the river that is on my filming list when it comes to wildlife. But again, we just drive by. And to sum this up, the town is today a good hub. It's a good place to stay while exploring the north, even the highlands. And if they move on with their plans to make the old town into something attractive, where the river meets the sea, and we have plenty of wildlife, I am sure that it will be a success, because the town's location can't fail. But despite that all, first and foremost, the people seem to love living here. And that's good, I believe them. This is a nice place despite those faults in the framework that somehow never has been fixed. And this video, it won't be any longer than this. And I will of course continue this journey soon, since my plan is to cover all Icelandic towns by time. And all my town videos, they are and will always be free of local sponsorship, so I can do my own approach like I want to do it. So I'm only responsible to my viewers, and feel free to use my sponsor links in the video description to get this huge project online. And with that, I'm sending you best regards from my home country, Iceland.